The storm rolled in heavy that night, drenching the Pacific Northwest forest in cold rain. Lightning flashed like nature's angry strobe, revealing a figure stumbling through the underbrush. He wasn't fully human anymore, his limbs thick, with fur, ribs showing beneath the coarse gray, blood matting his hind leg. The transformation had come early and violently. He didn't know why. He only knew the pain. Each breath was a labored rasp, the scent of pine and earth mixed with the copper tang of his own blood. The werewolf collapsed beneath a fallen cedar, claws digging into the wet moss. His body twitched with the remnants of the change, muscles torn and mending all wrong. For the first time in years, he felt fear, not of others, but of his own end. That was when she found him. The woman moved through the forest like someone born of it, hood pulled up, boots worn, a lantern in hand. She wasn't a hunter, though she carried a knife at her hip. She was gathering wild yarrow and goldenrod when she saw him, a massive, hulking figure, collapsed and shivering under the rain, amber eyes dim with exhaustion. She didn't scream. She didn't run. Instead, she knelt beside the creature, her face calm but alert. "You're hurt," she said softly, as if addressing a scared dog. "Can you understand me?" The werewolf growled low, a warning, but something in her voice cut through his instinct. He didn't lunge, he didn't run, he just lay there. The woman reached slowly into her pouch and pulled out a handful of dried herbs, crushing them between her palms. "You'll die out here," she whispered. "I don't know what you are, but you need help." He didn't resist when she placed the crushed yarrow on his wound, though he flinched at the sting. The storm kept raging, but beneath the cedar canopy, a fragile trust began to take root. The woman's name was Evelyn. She lived alone in a secluded cabin a mile from the trailheads. Too far for tourists, too quiet for hunters. Some said she was a witch. Others said she was grieving. She paid the rumors no mind. Dragging the wounded, Werewolf had been nearly impossible. He was heavy and half-conscious, but somehow he followed barely. Evelyn moved slowly, murmuring encouragement, guiding him through narrow deer paths until her cabin came into view. A modest wooden structure with creeping ivy, stacked firewood, and soft light glowing from the windows. Inside, she laid blankets across the floor near the fireplace. "I can't carry you," she said, "but you can rest here." The werewolf collapsed in a heap, his breath shallow. Evelyn stoked the fire, filled a bowl with warm water, and started cleaning the blood from his fur. He growled only once, when she touched the gash on his thigh, but then went still, watching her with wary eyes. She treated him the best she could, salve on his wounds, crushed herbs under his tongue. And all the while she spoke gently, not asking questions, not seeking explanations, just being there. Outside, the wind howled. Inside, the werewolf slept. When morning came, she found a man lying where the beast had been. He was young, mid-30s perhaps, thin and scarred with unkempt black hair and a long gash across his ribs. His clothes were torn beyond use, and a thin silver chain hung around his neck, the pendant long gone. Evelyn didn't panic. She covered him with a blanket and made tea. When he woke, he blinked in confusion, eyes flickering gold for a moment before settling into a stormy gray. "I should go," he rasped, voice like gravel. "You're not going anywhere," Evelyn said. "You've been out cold for 2 days." His name was Elias, and he remembered little, only flashes. A hunt gone wrong, running, changing, pain. Evelyn didn't pry. "Stay as long as you need," she offered. "There's stew on the stove and fresh bandages." He stayed. At first, Elias barely spoke. He would sit by the fire for hours, staring into the flames like they held his past. Evelyn worked around him, drying herbs, sewing hides, tending to her garden, and slowly something softened in him. He began helping, chopping wood, fetching water. He laughed once when Evelyn's cat swatted him for trying to steal a piece of bread. The sound startled them both. At night he dreamt of running through forests under a blood moon, of chasing shadows and feeling the hunger that came with fur and fangs. But in the cabin under Evelyn's care, the monster in him rested. The days grew colder, leaves turned to fire on the trees, and the scent of winter crept into the wind. Elias was stronger now. His wounds had healed, at least the ones on his body. But Evelyn noticed the tension in his jaw whenever the moon began to rise. One evening, as the sun sank behind the mountains, Elias stood by the edge of the clearing, watching the sky, his breath clouded in the chill. "It's tonight," he said quietly. "The full moon." Evelyn stepped beside him. "Will it hurt?" He didn't answer at first. "Sometimes. The change isn't always clean, but I don't think I'll hurt you. I can feel it. I'm more in control here." "Why?" He turned to look at her, brow furrowed. "Because you didn't scream when you saw me. You didn't run, you treated me like I was still human." Evelyn laid a hand on his arm. "That's because you are." He nodded once, then stepped back. "I'll go into the woods. I won't risk being near you. Lia, if I don't come back, don't look for me." Before she could argue, he disappeared into the trees. That night, under the full moon's light, Evelyn stood alone on her porch, listening. The wind was still. Then, from deep within the forest, a long, low howl echoed. Not a cry of pain, but something mournful. A voice longing to be understood. She whispered into the night, "Come back to me." He didn't return by morning. Evelyn waited, one day, then two. She searched the forest's edge but found no trace, no blood, no tracks, not even the usual signs of game. It was as if Elias had vanished into the trees. By the third day, she was gathering firewood when she heard it, a low grunt from the path behind her. She turned sharply, hand on her belt knife, only to see a shadow limping through the trees. He was human again, barely. Mud streaked his face, his shirt torn and damp with sweat. He collapsed just past the garden fence. Evelyn ran to him, cradling his head. "You came back. I tried," he gasped, "to fight it, but I ran far. It's all right." Her voice trembled. "You're safe now." She brought him inside and fed him broth spoon by spoon. For hours, she tended to him in silence, wiping his brow, stitching a gash on his shoulder. When he could finally sit up, Elias reached for her hand. "I thought I'd lose myself this time," he said. "But your voice, your kindness, it stayed with me, like an anchor." Evelyn squeezed his hand gently. "Then let it keep you grounded. You're not alone anymore." For the first time in years, Elias wept, not from pain or fear, but from the fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, the beast didn't have to win. Winter blanketed the forest in white, muffling sound and slowing time. The cabin remained warm, filled with the scent of pine, burning wood, and herbs drying above the hearth. Elias stayed, not because he was trapped by injury or curse, but because he wanted to. He and Evelyn fell into rhythm. Mornings spent foraging, afternoons cutting wood, evenings beside the fire. They didn't speak of love, but it was there, in shared silences, lingering glances, and the comfort of being seen without fear. When the next full moon approached, Elias didn't retreat into the forest. "I want to try something," he said quietly. Evelyn looked at him, her expression unreadable. "Here?" He nodded. "I think I can control it. I feel different, stronger. You changed something in me." That night, she helped him prepare ropes made of enchanted mountain ash, just in case, and a circle of protective herbs she'd learned from old books and older stories. The moon rose like a coin of silver fire, and Elias braced himself against the change. Bones shifted, skin stretched. He cried out, half man, half beast, until at last he knelt in the center of the cabin, covered in fur, trembling, but conscious. Amber eyes looked at Evelyn and didn't see prey. She stepped forward, slowly, heart pounding. "Elias," the werewolf lowered his head, pressing it gently against her palm. Tears filled her eyes. "You're still in there." In that moment, beneath the light of the healing moon, the beast bowed to the woman who had seen the man beneath. And, for the first time since the curse began, Elias didn't feel cursed. He felt whole. If you enjoyed this story and want more chilling legends and terrifying tales, make sure to like this video. It really helps us out. You can also click on our Ultimate Werewolf playlist to watch more horror and cryptid stories. The link is in the description below. And if you love horror, folklore, and unexplained mysteries, subscribe to the channel and join our growing community of fear seekers. But don't stop there. Turn on notifications by clicking the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Because in the world of horror, the scariest things happen when you least expect them. And trust me, you don't want to be left in the dark. Welcome to the darkness.